Right now, think of a memory you trust. A birthday, a first day of school, the face of someone you love. You can see it, can't you? Clear, detailed, real. You assume that memory is a recording, a little piece of the past saved exactly as it happened, waiting for you to press play. But it isn't. Every time you remember something, your brain doesn't replay it. It rebuilds it from scratch. And every single time it rebuilds it, it can change the details, add things that were never there, and erase things that were. The memory you trust the most might be partly or entirely something your brain invented. The answer to how this happens changes everything we think we know about the past, about truth, and about who we are. Let's start with a simple question. What actually is a memory? Most people imagine it like a video file. Something gets stored, sits untouched, and plays back the same way every time. But in 1932, a Cambridge psychologist named Frederick Bartlett discovered that's not how it works at all. He told people a strange folk story, then asked them to retell it, again days later, then weeks later, then months. And every time they retold it, the story changed. They dropped the parts that didn't make sense to them. They added details that were never in the original. They reshaped the whole thing to fit what they already believed about the world. They weren't lying, they were certain they were remembering it correctly. Bartlett realized something profound. Memory is not a recording, it's a reconstruction. Every time you recall a moment, your brain takes the few fragments that remain and rebuilds the rest on the spot, filling the gaps with assumptions, expectations, and guesses. And you never notice the seams. The rebuilt memory feels exactly as real as a true one. But here's what's fascinating. If memory is rebuilt every time, that means it can be tampered with from the outside. And in 1974, a psychologist named Elizabeth Loftus proved exactly how easy that is. Loftus would become the most important memory researcher of her generation, and it started with a car crash that never happened. She showed a group of people a film of a traffic accident, then she split them up and asked them all the same question, with one word changed. She asked some, how fast were the cars going when they hit each other? She asked others, how fast were they going when they smashed into each other? Hit, smashed, one word. The people who heard smashed estimated the cars were going significantly faster. Same film, same crash, one different verb. But that wasn't the disturbing part. A week later, she brought everyone back and asked a new question. Did you see any broken glass? There was no broken glass in the film. None. But the people who had heard the word smashed the week before were more than twice as likely to say yes. They clearly remembered glass on the road. Glass that never existed. Her single word had reached into their memory and added a detail to a scene that was already over. They weren't confused. They could see the glass in their minds. And if one word in a question can plant a piece of glass, the next question writes itself. How much can you plant? Could you plant an entire event? A whole memory of something that never happened at all? In 1995, Loftus set out to answer exactly that. And what she did still unsettles people today. The study became known as Lost in the Mall. She recruited volunteers and contacted their family members to gather real childhood stories. Then, she wrote each person a booklet of memories from their past. 3 of the stories were true. 1 was completely fabricated. The false story was always the same kind of thing. When you were about 5 years old, you got lost in a shopping mall. You were frightened. You cried. And eventually an elderly stranger found you and reunited you with your family. None of it had ever happened. But it was written in a family booklet, in a trusted researcher's hands, alongside real memories. The volunteers read all 4 stories and were asked to recall as much as they could about each one. And about a quarter of them remembered being lost in the mall. But it goes further than just saying yes. They began to elaborate. They described the fear. They described what the stranger looked like. They added details that were never in the booklet at all. Their brains were now actively building out a memory of an event that had never occurred. Some of them, when later told the memory was fake, refused to believe it. The invented memory had become indistinguishable from the real ones. This has been replicated again and again, with more dramatic events. Researchers have convinced people they once spilled punch on the bride at a wedding, that they got sick eating a certain food, even that they took a hot air balloon ride that never happened. Your past, it turns out, is far more editable than you've ever wanted to believe. But there's another layer to this, and it might be the strangest part of all, because the very act of remembering is what makes a memory vulnerable. In the year 2000, a neuroscientist named Karim Nader did an experiment that overturned a century of assumptions. The old belief was that a memory, once stored, was fixed, locked in place. Nader showed the opposite. Every time you pull a memory up, it becomes briefly unstable, almost liquid again, editable. And then your brain has to actively save it back down. He called it reconsolidation. And here's the unnerving implication. The memory you've revisited the most, your most precious, most replayed memory, is the one that has been resaved the most times. Which means it's the one that has drifted furthest from what actually happened. You are not remembering the original event. You are remembering the last time you remembered it. A copy of a copy of a copy, degrading a little more each time. Like a photocopy of a photocopy. The memories you treasure most may be the least accurate ones you have. And here's the part nobody talks about. This isn't just a curiosity. It has put innocent people in prison. For decades, eyewitness testimony was treated as the gold standard of evidence. A witness points across the courtroom and says, I will never forget that face. Juries believe it. Of course they do. But when the Innocence Project began using DNA to re-examine wrongful convictions, they found something staggering. The single greatest cause of those wrongful convictions was mistaken eyewitness memory. Not lies, not corruption. Honest people, certain of what they saw, who were simply catastrophically wrong. A witness shown a photo of a suspect can later confuse the photo with the actual criminal. A confident, detailed, completely sincere memory of a face that belonged to an innocent person. And in 2015, researchers Julia Shaw and Stephen Porter pushed it to its limit. Through nothing but repeated suggestive interviews, they convinced a majority of ordinary participants that, as teenagers, they had committed a crime that led to police contact. A crime that never happened. The participants generated vivid, detailed memories of doing something they had never done. If your memory can be made to confess to a crime you never committed, what is it really worth as a record of the truth? So what is a memory really? It wasn't one thing that fooled us. It was everything, all at once. It's not a recording, it's a reconstruction. Rebuilt fresh every time. It can be reshaped by a single word from the outside. Whole events can be planted that never occurred. And the very act of remembering quietly rewrites the file. Your memory was never built to be accurate. It was built to be useful, to keep you alive, to learn from the past, to tell a coherent story about who you are. Truth was never the priority. Survival was. So think back to that memory from the very beginning. The one you trust, the birthday, the first day of school, the face of someone you love. It still feels just as real. It always will. But somewhere in it, there may be a piece of broken glass that was never on the road. A detail your brain added on a night you weren't paying attention, that you have now remembered so many times it has become as true to you as anything else. You are, in a very real sense, the story you remember. The only unsettling question left is how much of that story actually happened. What's a memory you'd swear is true, but could never actually prove? Let me know in the comments.